Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield. And Dodo the parakeet. She's up there, not laying eggs for once, which is nice. She's become a factory hen, this bird. And we're kind of carrying on. This is another brief one. I'm gonna do this fairly quickly. We're reading through Don DeLillo, for my pleasure and for my sins, because I have mixed feelings about Don DeLillo, and I'm gonna say the same thing every single time I do one of his books. I take that back. There's a few of his books I think work all the way through, but most of his books don't work all the way through. I screwed up the chronological order. I was trying to read him chronologically for no real reason whatsoever, except that it would help me keep track of what I've read and what I haven't. I've read almost all of his novels before. I've read End Zone, which is one of his best known novels. This goes back to 1972. I wouldn't have read it until the 80s, but it's his college football novel, and it's probably one of his better known books. It is a good book to start if you haven't read Don DeLillo before. It is one of his funnier books and his more accessible books. Most of his books are similarly accessible. There's a couple difficult ones, but most of them are pretty easy to get into. My problem is I don't think they go anywhere, and I think the End Zone is a perfect example of that. The first half of End Zone is like all of his books, incredibly funny. It's one of his funnier books, and it mixes up a bunch of things that only Don DeLillo can mix up as well as he does. One is college football and the kind of bang bang rah rah bullshit of football, and the other thing is of course ROTC and war and game theory, particularly in the 70s. The game theory that's going on all over the who's that stupid organization that they're all trying to figure out ways you're going to win a nuclear war, and they set up all these game scenarios about who's going to win the war. And there's a lot of jokes on that, and the fact that this game game of violence is an unwinnable game and a ridiculous game. So there's a lot of jokes on. There's a lot of jokes about the kids in this college. They're all in kind of a really crummy middle of the road country college out in the South. And the central character, I forget, he gets in trouble, and so a lot of the kids who go there, these kids on the football team are kind of losers who kind of got there because no one else would take them. And the central characters get Gary Harkness, I think that's his name, and he's very similar to a lot of DeLillo central characters. He's funny, he's unaffected in a way. He's critical of everything around him, but he doesn't really care about very much. He's kind of an existential character, and he's interested. All the people around him are all strange. There's one character who's taking a course in the untellable. There's lots of jokes on academia and philosophy. It's called the untellable, where they're supposed to be studying some sort of weird existential philosophy course, where one of the things the character does is he has to memorize poems in languages he doesn't understand. It's like a little idea. Anyway, the game, the very short, I'm going to give the same review almost every time. The first half of the book sets up this great craziness of all these characters. The central character, Gary, is often meeting this guy, a major, at some hotel. There's very similarities to this and White Noise. And they're discussing war and how you're going to have humane wars and all the ironies of this ridiculous theorizing of war and violence and nuclear destruction. And that's all. Most of it is jokes. It's very easy to follow most of the first half, and then about halfway through it, the team is they're kind of not very good, and they're in a bad league. They meet a really tough team, and they're like these are monsters. It's a monster team who just like bangs and beats the crap out of every team they beat. And this team goes in and I think they do well against them, but it's a 30 or 40 page thing about a football game. And every time I read it, I get halfway through it, I think this is just too much. And the book sort of loses its plot. There's some funny scenes afterwards, but DeLillo's books they start off really well. They have great ideas. The characters are heading towards something, and in this case, they're heading towards becoming actually good at this horrible game. And then it just kind of peters out for 50, 60 pages. I don't even remember. I have trouble following his books in the second half, and I have trouble really caring what happens to the characters. But the first half, I just read you one passage. This is every paragraph in the first half of the little novel is almost always good. One of the coaches dies, and there's just so many jokes in this in the paragraph, and most of them work. I'll just read a little description of the funeral for this coach. Several weeks later, sometime between 3 and 6 in the morning, Tom Cook Clark shot himself in the head with an ivory-handled Colt .45. Emmett Creed, I think he's the coach, referred to him in a eulogy as one of the best football minds in the country. He was also a molder of young men and a fine interdenominational example to all those fortunate enough to have been associated with him. Creed himself assumed the deceased man's responsibilities with the quarterbacks. The wake was held at the funeral home in town because there was nowhere in particular to send the body and no family to send it to. Everyone commented on how good the embalmed corpse looked. This became the theme of the wake. We assembled in the anteroom, clinging to walls, avoiding the center of the room for some reason, and we told each other how good the dead man looked, as if he were not dead at all, but only waxed and well-dressed as part of some process of rejuvenation, and would soon be buzzed awake, thinner than ever, and quite refreshed. DeLillo has a great sense of these kind of social situations, and all the guys around the corners, they don't want to get in the middle of this wake. He just can describe a scene really well. We reacted to the impact of death in this way, exchanging comical remarks in all seriousness, consoling each other with handshakes and slogans. Major Staley came to pay his respects. The major commanded the Air Force ROTC unit at school. He saw me and came over. We shook hands, slowly and delicately, foregoing on this special occasion all intimations of virility. I understand he was despondent because of ill health, the major said. Anyway, there's a good picture of just a typical, brilliant, lovely, funny DeLillo paragraph. I just wish we're gonna keep reading until we find one of the novels that kind of works all the way through. There are a few, and they're usually the shorter ones. But I'm sorry to be repetitive in all these, but the project is just to read through these novels and see what where he's at his best, where he really hits the peaks, I think. And I'm looking for that book that works all the way through. Stay safe. Happy bathing.